Nearly a year after the 2018 midterm elections and a result that was thrown out because of evidence of Republican fraud, North Carolina's 9th district finally has a congressman-elect. Republican Dan Bishop won yesterday's special election by 2 points and fewer than 4,000 votes in a district President Trump won by nearly 12 points in 2016. The campaign was seen by both parties as potentially a first signal about voters' thoughts ahead of the 2020 presidential race and the Republican Party's strength with suburban voters. Steve Harrison is a political reporter for public radio station WFAE in Charlotte, and he's been tracking the race. Steve Harrison, thank you very much for joining us on the NewsHour. What have been reactions across the state to Dan Bishop's win?
So I think that that people were a little surprised, not so much that Dan Bishop won, but that he won by 2 percentage points. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot, but in the previous race last fall, the Republican candidate was ahead by 905 votes. So this was a little bit bigger margin. I think one of the early reads on it for Republicans is that President Trump came on Monday night and held a rally for Bishop in Fayetteville, which is at the far eastern end of the district, and apparently that worked. Cumberland County is the home of Fayetteville. Dan McCready, the Democrat, won that last fall, and in this time, Dan Bishop took Cumberland County. So, you know, this was a win for the president. He had, as he was leaving to come down to North Carolina, he was kind of downplaying his involvement in the race. But then, you know, after Dan Bishop won, he started taking a lot of credit for the win.
Which he has done. This is an interesting district. It sprawls all the way from Charlotte toward the western end of the state, all the way to Fayetteville in the east. It's urban, it's suburban, it's rural. What do you see in the results about who voted for whom that tells you why Bishop won and why, frankly, McCready came so close?
So the district is a gerrymandered district. The Republicans drew it to be a safe seat. And really the heart of the district is a part of Charlotte that is very wealthy, white, college educated, and has voted for Republicans in big margins for decades. That part of Charlotte, combined with Union County, a suburban county, has about 60% of the vote. It's designed to really carry the district for Republicans. But what's happened is that that part of Charlotte has really flipped. Dan McCready won it last fall. He expanded on that margin this time. And that part of Charlotte's going more blue. But at the same time, Dan Bishop was able to make inroads in the more rural parts of the district, working class voters. It was a little bit of a replay of 2016.
And you're saying, and you're pointing out and reminding us that McCready, the Democrat, did better than he did last fall. What are Republicans taking away from this? Are they telling you, are you sensing there's more nervousness about what President Trump can expect in North Carolina next year?
So I spoke with Bishop's campaign strategist today, and his view was, look, we may be losing college-educated voters in Charlotte, but he said, if we can make that up and by getting working class voters in rural counties, that's okay. That's still a winning coalition. He felt like they were in good shape for statewide races and going into 2020. On the Democratic side, like you said earlier, President Trump won this district by 12 percentage points. For the Democrat to get within 2 points is a pretty big shift. And if the Democrats can perform like that again in 2020, they have a really good chance of winning North Carolina.
And at this point, just very quickly on this, Steve Harrison, any sense of which party is better organized going into the presidential election?
I think that North Carolina will again be a highly contested swing state. Of course, the Republican National Convention will be in Charlotte next year. That's going to bring a lot of attention here. But I think that that both sides, as they have for the last 2 elections, are going to be spending millions of dollars and lots of time in North Carolina.
And finally, I want to ask you about what happened in your state capital, Raleigh, today. In a surprise move, the Republicans called a vote, which in essence overturned the Democratic governor's veto of a budget. I think this is a reminder. We think the country's divided from looking at politics in Washington. It's a reminder it's very divided at the state level.
Right. What happened in Raleigh today kind of takes takes it to a whole nother level. What happened was the Democratic governor of North Carolina had vetoed the Republican budget. The legislature does not have enough votes to override the budget. The Democrats it's been 2 months now with this impasse over what's going to happen with the budget. The Democrats this morning were under the impression there would be no vote on the budget. They say that the Republican leadership had told them that. The Republicans say no such thing. And this morning they had a quorum, and with hardly any Democrats in the chamber, they passed an override, and Democrats were livid.
Sounds like not a lot of love lost at this point. But again, a reminder of just how deep the partisan divide, even at the state and local level. Thank you very much, Steve Harrison with WFAE. We appreciate it.
Thank you.